Let's do it.
Our next presenter is Ryan Keller. His presentation is from the GPS to the web, process of campsite data collection to web map creation in the Tucson area. Ryan?
Thank you, Iris. My name is Ryan, and my project is entitled From the GPS to the Web. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a person who loves to be outdoors, especially hiking and camping. And while you may not all share that same excitement I get from hiking and camping, I feel like most of the people in this room probably have an appreciation for nature. And sometimes, you just want to get away from your jobs. You want to get out in nature and, maybe hike a mountain. So what better place to do that than out here in Tucson, Arizona, where we're basically surrounded by mountains on all sides that provide us spectacular views, like you can see here. We're in the Sonoran Desert, where we have a mild subtropical climate, that it doesn't rain very often, and we have sun for over 300 days a year. In addition to the beautiful views that we can see like this, there's also beautiful flora and fauna, like this white-tailed deer. So when I moved out here to Tucson 2 years ago, I did some research on where I could go hiking and camping, and what I found was that Tucson has multiple campgrounds, but the internet lacked detailed information on these campgrounds. So I wanted to provide a map service displaying specific attribute data, such as if the campgrounds had access to water, which out in the desert is very important, as you may know, as well as shade to get out of the intense Arizona sun. As well as necessities like that, I also thought it would be important to provide attributes such as if the campsites had fire pits and bear boxes to make your stay more enjoyable. And I also wanted to attach a picture, because we're such a visual society these days. Having a picture to look at ahead of time and know what you're getting into would be very convenient. So what this project will do is detail the process of data collection, map organization, and web map building to create a web application detailing campsites in Saguaro National Park, as well as the Santa Catalina Mountains, or Mount Lemmon. And at this time, I'd like to say most of the data collection part of this is going to highlight Saguaro National Park, which is where my internship was, and which was the initial extent of this project. I later expanded it to include Mount Lemmon because they have easy accessibility off the Catalina Highway. So, what you're looking at here, the data collection process, I used a Garmin eTrex 10 GPS for all of the hikes as well as the drives up Mount Lemmon. What that device allows me to do is track my movements as well as mark XY waypoints in the NAD 1983 UTM Zone 12 coordinate system per park standard, which is where I was able to get the GPS devices from. On this slide, you're looking at the Trimble Juno unit, which has a nice app. It's ArcPad, which is a mobile version of ArcMap that allows you to edit your map as well as its layers in the field, providing you have satellite signal. So I also mentioned I wanted to take pictures, so I took along a Nikon Coolpix L100 digital camera as well as an iPhone 4 to take pictures of the campsites. And when I couldn't use the Trimble Juno unit, I used manual data collection on pen and paper that would be uploaded, yeah, it's old school, to the computer later on. So for this collection process, I organized it into 3 hikes within Saguaro National Park that each collected 2 campgrounds, as well as 3 drives up Mount Lemmon to get the campgrounds on the mountain. So for the hikes, they were all overnight hikes, about 20 miles. You can see some of the supplies here. Not listed as headlamps as well as hiking poles. And the most important supply was water, as well as it being the most heaviest. Yeah. So these are the 3 hikes in Saguaro National Park East, and these are the 6 campgrounds. There are no campgrounds on the west side of the park, so I did not include that in the map. So I'm going to go in a little more detail here on each of the 3 hikes real quick. The first hike was a distance of 20.6 miles. It covered a total elevation gain of 4,600 feet. I collected data from 3 grass shack sites as well as 6 manning campsites. The second hike was 20.2 miles. It covered an elevation of 4,250 feet. I collected 3 sites from Juniper Basin Campground as well as 3 from the Douglas Spring Campground. The final hike was the shortest at 18.6 miles and the lowest elevation of only 4,070 feet. I collected 6 sites as well, 3 from Spud Rock and 3 from Happy Valley Campground. So we're just going to get a little bit more in depth of some of the campgrounds, not all of them, to let you know some of the geography and what I discovered on some of these hikes. This is Manning Campground, located on top of Mica Mountain at 8,000 feet. It's the largest camp in the park. There's 6 sites, and there's a central restroom. Let's see, in the middle there. You can get seasonal water from the wash if you have a water filter. I'd say that the water is probably available most of the year, but I won't say 100% because there's never certainty, especially out in the wild. So here for this hike, I didn't have the ArcPad. I had to manually collect the data, and you can see that there's nice shade cover here with the ponderosa pines, and the ground's pretty flat. It's a very nice campground. Juniper Basin campground's at 6,000 feet, so it's about 2,000 feet lower. You can see the site's about 50 feet from the trail there. In between the sites and the trail, there's a seasonal wash that also provides water to this campground, although it's much more seasonality in this area than on Manning Camp because of where the campground is in the park. It doesn't get as much water. It's close to the peak of a mountain. For this hike, I was able to use the ArcPad unit shown here to collect the data. Douglas Spring Campground, you can immediately see how much less vegetation is in this picture. That's because it's the lowest campground in the park at 4,800 feet. There is a functional restroom, and actually I failed to mention that the restroom at Juniper Basin is not functional right now. It's the only one in the park that is not working at the moment. So for Douglas Spring, like I was saying, it's the lowest in the park. It's more of a winter campground. It's pretty hot here in the summer, and there's not much shade. There's just a couple of mesquite trees. There is a functional restroom, and water can be found at Douglas Spring, just to the south of the campground. And you can see the difference in the foliage here with the grasslands and the shrubs. There's just not much shade. The last site we're going to look at is Spud Rock Campground. You can immediately see there's two sites to the north that are isolated. They are where Spud Rock Spring is located, but there is no water at Spud Rock Spring due to the drop in the water table in the Tucson area. So there's no water at this site, but there is a functional restroom located by Site 1. And you can see this site's at 7,400 feet, so there's lots of shade. It's a more isolated site, nice summer campground to hike to and camp at. As mentioned earlier, for the drives up Mount Lemmon, I collected the data with both GPS devices. There's a lot more sites on these that are maintained by the Forest Service instead of the National Park. And there's also a campground host there. These campgrounds were a lot nicer. They had tables as well as nicer toilets. The ones in the park are just open pit toilets that don't provide much privacy. So here I am manually collecting data at one of the smaller campgrounds in the area and then taking pictures at Molino Basin with the digital camera. So once I had collected all the data, it was time to prepare that data to put onto the web. Upon uploading the data to ArcMap, I had to verify its accuracy because if a campground was not in the right spot, that wouldn't look good on a web map. So what you're looking at here are my tracks from the Garmin GPS unit overlaid over some 6-inch imagery provided to me by the park. And that trail is only about 1 foot to 1.5 feet wide, so that line being directly on it, I estimated to be within 3 feet of accuracy, which for this project was more than enough. So upon verifying the accuracy of the data, I then had to manually enter the data that was collected from pen and paper. So I had previously created domains for bear boxes, fire pits, tables, and grills, and restrooms for yes or no. Water access, there was a domain created that had spring water, no water, seasonal wash. And then there's also a shade rating. So no shade, partial shade, full shade, or AM or PM shade, which meant there's either a lot of trees directly to the east or west of the campsite that provided full shade in the morning or evening. I also needed to attach the pictures to the to the map, so I used imageshack.com to host my pictures. Upon uploading the pictures, I copied a direct link from the website into ArcMap into a picture ID field. You can see here, this is the full attribute table with all the attributes and data that was collected for the project. So after the campsites layer, I had to create just a couple more layers that were needed to make the web map more functional. I wanted to create a campgrounds layer to be shown at smaller scale. So I digitized where the campgrounds were onto my points of the campsites. I also created a restrooms layer that will be displayed at the same scale as the campsites with pictures as well. And I also created a generalized trails layer. By generalized, I mean I cut out the cactus forest trails that are near the visitor center because there are no campgrounds in this location. So once the data was organized, it was time to create the web map application. The first step was to choose a base map. I chose a terrain map because it shows elevation and contours, which I thought was important for this project. You can still toggle between the street and imagery map if you choose and when on the application. After choosing the base map, I had to compact the files from ArcGIS and then upload them to the website and then organize the scale and visibility that I wanted them to be displayed. After that, I had to configure the pop-ups. So what you see here is one of the pop-ups for the campsites. So I added a title, and I also configured the attributes to add colons and spaces like to words like fire pit and bear box, because ArcGIS does not allow for spaces. And I also took out some fields that weren't needed. The last step was to make the map public. So I named it and publish it. So I named it Tucson Campgrounds. I created some tags to make it more easily searchable. And I also added a summary so you can, a short description of the map. Finally, I shared it because the whole point of this was to make it public so everyone can use it, and then making a web application. In addition to making just the ArcGIS Online map, you have the option of creating this web application, which gives you a couple more features on the map that you can toggle between, which we'll look at. The map is available through ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Explorer. ArcGIS Explorer shows the same map as ArcGIS Online, which is different graphics. We're going to take a look at the web mapping application because there's a really cool feature on there that I enabled that I really like. So you'll see initially like the map looks a little clustered, and this is one of the drawbacks of using a template and not creating it on my own. The reason I chose to use a template on Esri was because it'll be available forever, and I wanted this information to be used by people. So the other map on the ArcGIS website is going to show all of the campgrounds. This one, if you just move, you can see the ones in Sorrel National Park. But we're just real quick going to look at, let's see, one of the sites. So this is Rose Canyon. You can see it's accessible through April through October, and there are restrooms. So when we'll zoom to the campground, you can see the sites pop up with all the restrooms. We can click on a campsite. This is Rose Canyon campsite number 41. There's a picnic table, a grill, a fire pit, a bear box, a restroom. There's full shade. Water's provided through a central water spigot. And there's a note for this slide, this is an RV only site. So we can click on the picture and see a beautiful high definition image of Rose Canyon Campground number 41. And for those of you that want to see a picture of the restrooms, we can take a look at that as well. Let's see. So for the fields for this, functionality was important because there was that one bathroom at Juniper Basin that was not functional. I denoted this as a covered pit toilet because the ones in the park, some of them do not have a roof over them. It's just a hole surrounded by a fence. And unisex means that there's just one toilet. There's not a male and a female. Although some of the ones on Mount Lemmon do have male and female entrances. So you can see the restroom here. You can also see the central water spigot if we can zoom in where water can be received. And then this is going to be the real cool feature of the application, let's see, that I like a lot. So let me zoom out a little bit. We're going to go to the national park, where you can see the trails there that I included. Let's see. So the elevation profile tool I thought was really cool, especially if you're a hiker and you want to know what kind of distance you're going to be hiking over. So you can click on the measure tool, you click on this measure icon, and then you click on a point. Actually, let me give myself a little bit more room here. All right, we'll click on a measure tool in the middle, and then you click once, and then each time you click, well, eventually, let's see. There we go. All right, so each time you click, you can change the direction. So we're going to roughly follow this trail as if we were going from Happy Valley Campground up to Spud Rock Campground, which is, let's see, there it is. And then you double click to end it. And then you get this really cool elevation profile on the bottom. So you can see at the bottom we start at Happy Valley, and the little red X is going to move as we scroll along the trail. We get to a maximum elevation of 7,300 feet. And then we go through some ups and downs as we end our trek here at Happy Valley, at Spud Rock Campground. So I'd love for you guys to check it out. It's available through ArcGIS Online right now, with hopes of it being published on the Saguaro National Park website soon. In conclusion, over 203 campsites were collected. I also found out that you cannot have enough collection devices. It's important to have backups. You may run out of battery power. You may not be able to acquire a signal. You may fall and break the device. It may get wet. And also organization was key for this entire project, preparing the fields and knowing what data I was going to collect ahead of time, so that if I went in the field and saw something that I liked after I had done a hike, I can't go back and do that hike, or if I could, but it would cost more time and money. So I'd especially like to thank Becky, who I don't think made it tonight, but she made all this possible through Swallow National Park by letting me use the GPS devices. Peter, Chris, Iris, and Jen. Lindsay helped me on my drives up Mount Lemmon, and James was present on all 3 of my hikes in the park. Couldn't have done it without you guys. And now I'll open it up to some questions. Yep.
In the Swallow National Park campsites, there were some water sources provided by wash. Were those campsites prone to flash flooding in monsoons?
I don't think at the elevation that they're at, there's not enough inflow to where you'd have to be worried. Most of the campsites are pretty far, about 10 to 20 feet off of the washes, and most of them you've got a couple of feet of elevation difference. I would think if there were lower elevations next to washes, that would kind of be risky, but most of them were near the tops of watersheds where I wouldn't think that that would be a concern.
Were there other hazards that you identified at campsites, and if there were, could you possibly,
What do you mean by other hazards?
steep drop-offs?
Oh, yeah. Well, all the trails are really gnarly back there. The Tanque Verde Ridge hike, it was really hard to even find the trail, and there aren't many too steep drop-offs, but there's definitely some slick rock spots that could be slippery, and that would be kind of cool to document. I could definitely create a layer and upload it that would just like maybe show a danger symbol, and you could click on it and it would tell you what that danger is. Sure.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.